All right, so are you just seeing the presentation or are you seeing a whole bunch of other stuff too? All right, I'm seeing thumbs up, thanks. All right, hello everybody. Welcome back, we're back. To kick off Fundraising Friday, our new season. We are in year 3 of our relationship with the Resilience Initiative to do Fundraising Friday, which is like so cool. And time does fly. However, I've only been here for a year. I can't say only anymore, I guess. But before joining the team, I was a student of Fundraising Fridays. So I have been a big fan for a while. But as you all know, for folks who've been here for a minute, we like to start off our presentation with something timely and exciting that's pop culture or political in nature. And coming from Baltimore and a child of the 70s and 80s, I could not pass up the opportunity to give a shout out to the 50th anniversary of hip hop. And this is a screen grab from the Grammy Awards did a tribute, and some of the artists and performers that I fell in love with in my younger non-gray years are on stage. It was just amazing. So if there are any hip hop fans in the group, this slide's for you. So as I mentioned, this is the kickoff. We're just, not a lot of content. This is really about a conversation to get us started on the year ahead. We'll take a look at all the things that we're going to be talking about. But also, I want to hear from you. I want to hear what are the types of trainings that you are hoping to see. What you've liked in the past, what you liked in the past, we'll get to that, but sort of priming the pump for the folks who need a minute to think about things before they talk. But let me just, start with the next slide. How's that? One of the things that you might notice differently is that the Progressive Multiplier team has progressively multiplied. I was the newbie until my colleague Kudfili Thomas, who's on the call today too, joined. So now I'm like an old timer at 11 months. We are very excited that our team is growing, and that we hope to we see a trajectory where we will keep growing, and that means we'll be able to keep doing things like this and offering you great services. Hopefully, and dole out a lot more grants. But I wanted to share this slide not only because we typically do, but also so you could see the faces of folks that might pop into these sessions. We're looking at Fundraising Fridays and our trainings in general as a place where we will bring in our faculty. All of our staff all have gifts and talents, specialties that they can share, and they'll help present these trainings when the alignment is right. So this is your way of sort of getting used to faces and names, so that when you see them pop up, they feel more familiar to you. The other thing I wanted to share is that our board has also grown, and that one of the things that we've done recently is to add a former grantee to the board, so that we have the voices of folks who've actually received our funding and been through paces with us to see how it works, to help with with the governance and oversight of our organization, and also on the ground movement group specialists there too. So getting underway, I want to start with with introductions, but my first introduction I would like to pass it over to my colleague Kudfili to introduce himself and let y'all know a little bit about him.
Thanks, Molly. Pleasure to meet everyone. Feeling Thomas, Stephen pronouns. I am based in Dallas, Texas, and I am the new Director of Program Learning for Progressive Multiplier Fund. I come to PM as a lifelong fundraiser, working in various movement-based organizations, and recently as the founder and executive director of the Atlas Center for Nonprofits. Another capacity building organization for grassroots and social justice organizations, Really excited to join this space, to learn more from you all, and to share in this space, and really do awesome comfort. And I think this is a great opportunity, not only for us to share what we're finding, but to hear from you, what you're finding in this space, and really tailor our experiences to your needs. So really excited to dive in over the next couple of weeks. Pleasure to meet you all.
Thank you. Um, our our program today is brought to you by the Resilience Initiative. We always, do a shout out to the Resilience Initiative when we get to this part of the program, but I'm going to take a liberty here, Janet. I hope you don't mind if you might introduce yourself, because our partner, our partner is here, so you don't feel like you have to do a whole big thing unless you want to, but I would love for you to just wave and say hello to the folks.
Hi, this is me.
But if you want to do a spiel, go for it.
I don't really need to, but thanks, Polly. I'm Janet. I'm the director at the Resilience Initiative. You probably get emails from me in your inbox every couple of weeks. That's me. There's a real person behind those emails. And we are just we so appreciate our partnership with Progressive Multiplier, and so happy to be relaunching Fundraising Fridays that I just needed to jump in as well today, just to see you all and just to be part of this launch and hear more of like what you're wanting to learn in this series, because I'm just always eager to hear from any of you all the time about anything. So this is just an invitation to always hit reply on any of those emails you get in your inbox with like ideas you may have for other offerings where, we do our programming a quarter or so at the time, kind of intentionally, because it allows us to be more responsive and open to emerging trends and needs in the field. So feel free to keep those lines of communication open. We love hearing from you and serving you in the best way possible. So thanks, Polly, for that moment.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate you hopping on like that. This is just a really special relationship that we've had with the Resilience Initiative, and we're big fans of them. So it's nice to hear that they're fans of ours too. But because we've created this space where not only learning happens, but sharing happens, and a lot of really cool connections have happened in the space too. And I want to keep that going. And part of the way that we can keep that going is if folks remember to introduce yourselves in the chat. Again, this is one of the ways that we help keep attendance, because it's hard for me to keep a running list while I'm talking, but I can save the chat. So please introduce yourself with your name, your pronouns, your organization, and your role. And the other thing that I wanted to share is that we have a private YouTube channel where these videos get saved to. You wouldn't be able to find it if you searched it on YouTube. You can only find it through the URL, which Kafili is going to be dropping into the chat for folks, but it's also on the screen. We created a bit.ly one so that you don't have to try to capture the big long one for there. But give us a few days delay between the session and when it gets posted, but there's plenty of content there for you to revisit from years past to keep you busy in the meantime. The other thing I wanted to tell you is that at any time, this is like totally a communication space. Pop in, I can't always see people raise their hand or, do a thumbs up. So if you have a question, like literally come off mute if you are muted and ask it out loud. You can feel free to drop it in the chat, but also just remember I might not see it right away. So, please don't feel shy. Family space. We want to hear from you throughout this whole process. Okay, so what does this partnership mean? What's available through this partnership? So, of course, there's Fundraising Friday. That's why we're here. But there's something new about Fundraising Friday. We've decided in consultation, we came up with with the thought of like, we have done a bunch of fundamental fundraising trainings, like the basics, and we've built on the basics with the deep dive discussions. So we didn't want to sort of retread old ground, but we wanted to create new content based on those fundamentals. So we're gonna still do, the first session is going to be like sort of fundraising fundamental things, but we're going to build on the trainings that we've done in the past. It'll be new content in the same field and theme. So for folks who've like, oh, I've sat through this before, it's still going to be some new content. There's still going to be stuff that you can learn. For folks that feel like new, that content might be new, there'll be stuff for you there for you too. It won't be so advanced that it's going to be out of reach, but you also will have the older content for you to go back to. We will also share the content that we've done previously when it aligns with the training that we're doing currently. So if we, for example, if we do a training on major individual donors, we know we've done a training on major individual donors in the past, we'll share that video, that deck in advance, and then the new training will build off of that. So you can revisit the old content and be prepared for the new. So that's what's different about the first session of the month. The second session of the month, instead of doing the deeper dive on the same content, we want to try to do current trends, next level thinking to help you bring your personal game and your organization's game to the next level. And one of the things that we've heard from folks is like folks want to have like deeper thought conversations, and we're trying to create a space for some of that. The one that sort of comes to mind is when we had the big discussion around the nonprofit industrial complex last year. We had those 2 sessions, and the conversation was just so dynamic and so interesting that we want to create more space to have big picture movement changing around fundraising and communications discussions. The other part of what we do with this partnership is our one-to-one coaching or strategic assistance. Folks can sign up for 1 to 5 hours of individual coaching or consulting, or like help you build a thing, deliverable participation, preparation type, help you with the project. We've done things on board fundraising, development plans, figuring out a fundraising strategy for email. We've done lots of different things, help folks with major donors. It can also serve as like your, phone a friend. I know when I've been in the development director chair, I sometimes just wanted to like tease out a problem with somebody else. If you want to set up your one-on-one coaching time if you want to get someone on one time and you want to use that time for that, you can use that time for that. We know how hard it is to be a fundraiser. Both Kafili and I are fundraisers professionally before coming here. So we know what it's like. It's not theoretical for us. We've actually done it, and we hope that we can be able to give you that direct, like, this is what I did. This is the advice I can give you here, assistance. If you'd like to sign up for that, there's a Google form that you can fill out through the Resilience Initiative. And Michelle Mingle, our other partner, the name you might see in other emails through the Resilience Initiative, is free to take your questions on the subject matter as well. If anybody wants to have any questions about this or say anything about the strategic partnerships, the strategic assistance part of this partnership, please feel free to jump in. I know folks have been like, well, I'm thinking about it, I'm not quite sure. So if anybody has anything they want to say to get somebody off the fence, please jump in.
You got some love, Polly, in the chat from folks who have taken advantage of it. So
yay.
Yeah. From Meg and Michelle.
Yay. Thanks, y'all.
And others. Yeah.
Yes. Polly rocks. She's helpful and entertaining.
I'll take it. Thanks, Meg. All right. So I know that there are a lot of new faces. There's a lot of familiar faces, obviously, in the group, but I also see a bunch of new faces. So as always, we like to do a quick introduction to Progressive Multiplier. And so at our core, Progressive Multiplier is a funding intermediary. And what we do is we fund progressive groups to do fundraising experiments. As an intermediary, all that means is we raise money to then give it away. But we don't just give it away, we give it away with strategic assistance so that we can help the progressive movement build their fundraising muscle and get to scale. And especially organizations who do more than half of their work around the issues that, most funders don't like to fund, like civic engagement work or organizing, or, like creating the systemic change that will truly create the progress that we want to see. That's sort of just like the gist around what we do. I don't know very many other funders out in the world that are like, yeah, we want to fund fundraising. But that's where we are because we want to demonstrate to the greater philanthropic community that these are good bets, that if they truly believe in nonprofit sustainability, and they want to see these, programs thrive, that they should not be afraid to invest in fundraising to help those organizations do that. So we want to lead by example, and that's why we do funding. One of the other reasons why we do funding in this way. So, specifically, we provide funding to start or strengthen scale of fundraising efforts. We, help people develop new fundraising programs or build on the programs that they already have. But we also, we're not covetous of the knowledge that we get through these projects. As soon as we have a new learning that comes out of these fundraising experiments and the grant making that we do, we want to share it with the progressive community so that we can all learn and grow together. For their funders, what we try to do is we try to create opportunities for them to understand that that these are high leverage investments, that there's power in giving movement groups the funding that they need to get where they need to go, that fundraising can take a minute, but there is significant return on that investment, and to try to teach them to and try to help them understand that they shouldn't be afraid of maybe like a slow burn to get there. But that it's not just, we don't believe in just throwing money at the problem, but we believe in being strategic and provide the assistance, the expertise, the risk management to make sure that that project gets to where it needs to go. We're not afraid of failure. We're fundraisers. We know sometimes the stuff doesn't work, but when we fail, we learn and we try to course correct and keep it moving. So that's what we try to bring to the table for our movement groups and for the funders that we partner with. And if you are interested in seeing if you could be funded by us, we always have our LOI, which is a very light lift LOI on our website, and it's on the grant seeker section of our website, and we fund in these 3 program areas. And if you're not quite sure if if you'd be a good match, you can always reach out, and we can have a conversation in advance, or you can submit your LOI and we can have a conversation after the fact. But if you've got a fundraising experiment that you would like to try, doesn't have to be like a brand new thing to the fundraising world. It can just be something that you've never tried, and that you need investment to do it, and you just can't do that internally. Check out the LOI and see if there's something that we can do. But remember, we're an intermediary, which means we got to raise money to give it away, so it can take a minute sometimes. Are there any questions about how we do what we do? I know that's a much longer time that we usually spend on this part of the presentation, but since this is orientation, I wanted to make sure that folks really got their head around it. All right. The current state of fundraising discussion. Now, typically when we talk about like what's going on in the fundraising world, we like to have statistics and somebody said this, and here's a study, and you can get the reference. It's a little too early in 2023 to get any good statistics about what's happening in 2023. So unfortunately, I did, beat the bushes and look for all of the big fancy companies to see if they put their stats out yet, but they didn't. So we've got to be our own experts here. And I would love to hear from folks. What are you seeing so far in 2023? I know Kafili and I have had a lot of conversations with movement groups and have seen some things, and we're happy to jump to share some of those anecdotes, but I'd love to hear, does anybody want to share anything that they're seeing so far? One of the things that I have been seeing or hearing from folks is that their foundation funders are starting to claw back or pull back on, maybe not completely pull back a grant, but say, we're gonna reduce next year's or this year's funding by a certain amount. There's a lot of that, like, oh, we're taking this time to like navel gaze and figure out if this is, our new strategies for upcoming years, which is sort of scary. I'd like to hear the comment about the,
There's a
uh,
hand. If you stop sharing your screen, you might be able to see more of the hands too. Is it Abiha? Did I pronounce your?
Yes, you
Urge?
did.
yeah, please
Okay.
jump in.
Hi, so hello everyone. What I've noticed at our organization is that in the first quarter, we are seeing more recurring donors sign up, but at lower dollar amounts. So that's one thing I've noticed. And then another pattern that's coming is that um, our annual renewal donors who gave in the first quarter last year are giving less this year. So my theory is it's probably got to do with, someone also mentioned some skittishness around a looming recession, finances. And this is anecdotal, but I had a couple of people reach out to me to say, hey, I need to cancel my monthly donation. It's a very small group, maybe like 2 people. And the reason they said was, I just can't afford it right now. But I will once I can. So that's something I've noticed just in our field.
Oh, thanks, Abiha, for that. That actually does remind me, I've heard a couple of people mention the same thing about monthly donors pulling back. And the only one of the recommendations I can make to that is like, the first thing should be like, of course, gratitude and thank them for letting you know, but like, ask them, would a lower amount do? Like, that's an option, but also, can we just turn it off for a while and we'll, let's touch base in 2 months, 3 months or whatever, so that it's more of a pause than a stop. Because it's harder to restart somebody than it is to like, click the pause button again. We did a workshop last year, so it would be in our YouTube page about the impending economic downturn that we were talking about in the fall of last year. And Bethany went through some really cool information about the economy and looking at actual numbers that I think might quell some nervousness that y'all might have. That doesn't necessarily help the nervous donors out there who are watching all the news stories that they're being told, that the end of the world is coming. Does anybody else want to jump in right now and just sort of let us know what's going on or what you're seeing so far?
Hi, this is Kirsten with the Santa Cruz Museum of Natural History. We do a lot of environmental focused and education work, and I apologize for not having a screen share. I have slow hotel Wi-Fi, but we've been living in a disaster zone. We started with the CZU lightning complex fires, and then this year we've been right in the middle of our annual appeal, which we had done a little deeper dive to lapsed donors and spent a significant amount getting back in touch with them. We are moving along at a steady clip, but as we're dealing with and I see this in the South and on the East Coast and folks facing tornadoes right now, when you're independent nonprofits and you're reaching out to your individual donors, we've seen a lot of the donor advised funds and some of the other larger scale organizations doing this very rapid, they have much deeper pockets in terms of their marketing capacity to come together around the disasters and provide direct support, which is incredibly important, but also watching it impact our individual capacity for fundraising, particularly for our education and outreach programs, some of which directly impact families who've been hit and can really use some support for their children in the education realm during these tragedies. And what I'm wondering is for folks, if there's anyone in other parts of the country that have had repeated impact of natural disasters, how is it impacting your fundraising landscape as smaller organizations doing direct outreach versus working with United Way or some of the other organizations who come together to fundraise? How are folks facing those as we kind of turn our energy towards people's basic survival needs in the midst of the fundraising landscape? Without sounding tone deaf, you want to also be able to continue providing our services. I'd like to hear a little bit about what folks are doing.
Is anybody experiencing that you can speak on? I think it's also relevant for organizations who might have seen, at other times, for example, like when the movement for Black Lives was really front and center after the murder of George Floyd, and how how groups were like, well, how do I speak in this space when what's going on for my organization isn't necessarily relevant to the moment. So I think that if folks, have something to say, I think it's correlative here, and would love to hear your thoughts on what you may or may or what you have done in the past.
If I can also offer one little piece, a lot of what we're doing is directly correlative. We're going down to the areas where people are unhoused because of the levee break at the Pajaro River, and we're trying to find ways to be of service to the community, but also, to your point, there's no separation between any of these things that we're all doing, and finding ways for our organizations to learn and incorporate what the education that we're receiving to things like social justice initiatives, and making sure that we're in the right mindedness about it just enhances our capacity to serve our communities. So, and then the point is also to articulate it. So, but I think the bigger thing for me is the marketing capacity of larger organizations. And I don't want to sound, let's see, negative about it, but there's a little bit of a capitalism quality to the way some of the bigger nonprofits can fundraise during times of crisis that that is not always, to me, in the best taste as well in terms of the service that we all want to provide our communities and society as a whole. So I have a real mindfulness about the way that we reach out and the tenor of our message. And if there's anybody else who's dealt with natural disaster, which is the new normal, natural disaster crisis, I'd love to hear a little bit of input, or community crisis.
And if folks, want to let that sink in a little longer and get in touch with Kirsten and or me directly afterwards, when you've thought about it, please, feel free to reach out that way too. I know sometimes it's not always comfortable to jump in, or, you don't really think of the answer until later.
I can take a stab. I don't know if this will answer your question, but so I work for a reproductive justice organization, and our version of a crisis last year with the fall of Roe, Supreme Court's decision on the Dobbs decision. It was wild. Last year was pretty wild in the realm of reproductive justice. And for my audience, there were a lot of big organizations that have a lot of resources, that do a lot of work in reproductive justice, that were out there front and center, that had more visibility, that were getting a lot of attention and getting a lot of dollars, which is great. Everyone, I believe in an abundance mentality, it's for the movement. But my organization does a lot of grassroots work as well. We do a lot of base building in the South and Midwest, which needs resources. So when big organizations with deeper pockets are out there front there raising money, I do feel a little well, we've got what can we do? I was the first person hired 3 years ago at our organization for grassroots giving. Prior to that, there was no structure for it. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there, that I do understand a little bit of where you're coming from, and sometimes larger organizations are very territorial. One of these platforms allows tandem fundraising, where people can donate once and it gives to a bunch of organizations. And I've had so much success in smaller grassroots organizations just adding Urge onto their form. They don't have to do that, but they're like, hey, we're raising money for reproductive justice. Urge is a good organization. Let's make sure money gets to them as well. And so So yeah, there is that, there's a bit of that too. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but I just want to say that I hear you and I understand that.
So somebody had posted, Malam, am I saying your name correctly? A positive thing, at least I see this positive that they're seeing.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, it's Melum.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak on that. Well, I will say, give the caveat that my experience is sort of filtered through my having joined my team, I think very recently within the past couple of months. And so some of it I'm sure is just kind of like new employee energy. But I think as opposed to my previous stops in fundraising and development, I think I've noticed, well, one, I think more of a preference for in-person engagement, in-person events, and a little bit less reluctance to engage that way. I think people are excited to be somewhere in person. And on the flip side of that, I think that what I've observed with our virtual events is sort of a downturn in general attendance for that. I think Zoom fatigue is something that's really kind of hit everybody across the board. And so I think yeah, definitely is a positive development in the last I'd say it kind of started in 2022, but definitely we're feeling it earlier this year. And then as well as that, I think that whereas in my previous outreach attempts to schedule one-on-ones and sit downs with donors, I think I've definitely gotten a much warmer reception in the last few months to sit down and meet with me, even non-fundraising calls or small to mid-size donors, which is something that's really encouraging for me, are responding more frequently and more affirmatively to outreach attempts. And so I think that's something that I've been pretty pleased by over the last few months.
Yeah, I find that really a really great news, or at least hopefully news, because we all know, if you've been in fundraising for more than a minute, that one-on-one fundraising, one-on-one relationship building is the number one way to grow your program. People give to people. And so building those relationships are going to help you with your advocacy efforts as well as your fundraising. So it's nice to hear that that is increasing, at least in your organization.
To build off of that in-person fundraising, I think coming out of the pandemic, I'm feeling more internal pressure to do events again, for better or worse. I, as many of us do, have mixed feelings about fundraising events. So that's a new thing for me this year, is like, how am I building events into our plan again?
And if I can, just bounce off of that, I think one thing that we've experienced a fair degree of success with is experimenting with hybrid events, and not necessarily like couching the purpose of those engagement opportunities in like so much of a fundraising ask, as much as more of like information sessions, or for example, for us, we published a book last year, and so we're doing a lot of book events that can very easily turn into like hybrid fundraising opportunities, and seeing a pretty good return on that. So that might be something to think about.
Abiha, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, I'm going to be doing a lot of talking here, so let me know if I need to step back. So I was actually having a conversation with a board member, because obviously this year we can't do an in-person event, fundraising event, but we're thinking about next year. And we were just gauging like our board's interest, like, is that something they'd want to do? And something that kept coming up was that there's a lot of togetherness in the reproductive justice movement, and people are craving community after everything that happened, everything that's happening in the world. There's just this deep desire to share space with people, kind of as a comfort. Like, sometimes like community, it just feels good to be around people, knowing that you're doing the work together. And that there are fun ways to do it. One board member is like, hey, why don't we do a drag fundraiser? Because Urge is pretty like bold in our like, we're a young people organization, so we are a lot of fun. So I want to add on to say that, yes, I've heard even from our field staff, even from our chapter members, they're shifting to in-person programming events. Our program has pretty much, gone back to in-person. However, for fundraising, the conversation is, if we're going to invest into holding an event, where do we hold it when we're spread out all over the South and Midwest? Well, virtual is really easy for that. Let's do a hybrid event. But how do we get people to show up? And so that's something, some organizations have like these big featured speakers that draw people to attend virtual events. I don't think we'll be able to, swing that, where, we're not that famous. But we're getting there. So I just wanted to say that I would love to do an in-person event, a fundraiser, but realistically, I don't know. And I know there's interest in it. I just don't know if our base is ready for like an in-person fundraising event versus an in-person program. We're currently in the middle of Abortion Positive Tour. I feel this is a great place to generate leads, have people learn about Urge, do more like visibility, and then invite people maybe next year. And then one last thing, I received an invitation for an in-person gala for a Texas-based abortion fund. And I was so happy to see that. They're giving awards to young people, and it made me so happy. I reached out to our deputy director and like, can we please like be a sponsor? Because I want tickets. I want to show up. I want to support, and I want to see how they do it, so that when we have the capacity, we can do it as well. So yeah, that's me.
I love it. Samira, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to offer some, I guess, insight, or maybe some of our of my organization's experience with working in the kind of like a very hybrid platform. Ever since 2020, of course, with the pandemic, we transitioned fully online. Just for context, I work with the Michigan Student Power Network, and we are mostly doing advocacy work where we are connecting students across the state of Michigan and helping them to organize around their different issues, and also paying them alongside that, which is not something that a lot of fellowship programs can offer. But we have transitioned to being pretty much fully online since the pandemic. And I am also seeing where some of our fellows and some of our staff members, but a little bit less because we're a little bit more spread out, have been really wanting some of that more in-person engagement, wanting to be, wanting to create community. But also because they're students, it's really hard to organize folks into that space, to get everybody, into a space where they could really be experiencing that. Some ways that we have in the past made it a little bit easier. You were mentioning how you may not have the funding to pay like a large facilitator to be able to, come in and teach something. We have done a lot of events in the past where we just bring in basically like our organizer friends that we know have good knowledge that they would be willing to share, and we pay them a contractor like fee, and we just have them come in and speak. We do a lot of different events like that. We always guarantee that we have food at our in-person events. That has been a really great way to engage with turnout. And then also we really like to mix it up with the types of things we were doing. So you're talking about how you're not sure how you could support like a fundraising event versus like a programming event. So we've kind of been, especially lately, engaging with it with a format where we could do kind of both. So for example, we have our upcoming People of Color Caucus retreat, and we're doing some parts of it that are kind of like organizing basics and talking about like different things that are happening within the organizing world, advocacy work within Michigan. But we're also having like a yoga session during that, so that folks can really connect with each other and connect with their bodies. So I think it's really just a lot of like finding really creative ways to engage in folks mentally and physically, figuring out different ways to bring them into a space that isn't just like teaching them something or fundraising. So yeah, I just wanted to offer that up to you.
Thank you so much for that. I don't really want to shut down the conversation, but I want to pick up where we left off with the presentation. And then if we have more time, let's dive back into this, because I think this hearing what folks are seeing and experiencing and asking each other questions is like my favorite part of Fundraising Fridays. So thank you so much for the robust conversation. And I already posted it in the chat, but we do have 2 sessions that we did last year on hybrid events. One was more educational, and the other one was a discussion with 2 movement groups that recently did hybrid events, and they talked about the lessons that they learned in it. You know, it was a cool conversation with 2 groovy organizations. So I'm going to reshare my screen. If I cut somebody else who wanted to say something, please reclaim your time. And I'm happy to hear it. And then otherwise I'll keep going. All right, so I put my screen back up. Are you just seeing the presentation now? All right. Thank you so much. So as I mentioned earlier, we are changing the format a little bit of Fundraising Friday based on some of the feedback that we got. And I know that sometimes, when you get the emails, parts of the email just sort of fade into the background because you see it so much. But if you notice, there is a request for feedback, and we really do use the feedback to help guide our planning and also the conversations in the sessions themselves. So we appreciate you utilizing all the ways to provide feedback to us about Fundraising Fridays. But some of the things that we've heard in the past, or things that, in general, like most of the people thought that the content was useful, which thank you. I'm glad to hear that we're hitting the mark and that it was relevant. So that's good to hear too. And the only way that we can continue to keep it useful and relevant is if we hear from you. So what some folks didn't like was that it was funny because we had both ends of the same point. Sometimes there was too much conversation and we didn't have enough to continue it, like maybe that last slide showed. And sometimes not enough people were talking. So we'll try to strike the balance, but really the discussion is on y'all. I want you all to feel like this is your space and you can take space because this is how we learn from each other. So I did find it interesting that we saw comments on both ends of that spectrum there. People did ask for more templates, plans, stuff like that. We'll do our best to try to accommodate that. We will be relaunching our community space that will have tools and templates and stuff like that on that site in a few months. So that'll be accessible to folks in this cohort. Folks wanted to hear more case studies or at least stories of like actual groups who did actual things and how they did them. We do plan to try to incorporate more of that discussion and networking. Clearly, we're big fans of that. And more panelists and guests. So that is something that we have that we're paying attention to, and we're having those discussions now as well, trying to figure out who we can pop into the sessions that we're thinking about. For folks who've been in past sessions, I'd love to hear what you thought about the stuff in the past, what you thought was good, what you think we should do differently, or what you want to see more of. Or do folks feel like this was pretty much on the mark?
I attended.
appreciate, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this seems on the mark for me. I think I attended a handful of last seasons of the Fundraising Fridays. Thank you.
It sounds like a good target and mix. I do think that one of the nice things about Fundraising Fridays is, and especially now seeing the group grow, having been at multiple sessions last year, is I think there's the opportunity for more idea exchange, and I do really appreciate that, whether it's verbal or people typing things into the comments. It's been, I think, greatly beneficial because we're in an era of such rapid change with what's been transpiring. It feels like the landscape has really been rearranging itself, and I think it's going to continue to do so. I think this phrase new normal, but this is that we should have an expectation that there's not going to be a return to the good Lord willing and the creek rise, the large scale. I love all the creative ideas I've heard from other folks. And as for the guest speaker thing, I think that I would love to see some of those. I'm selfishly, there's a part of me that would not like that would rather see them as a separate thing rather than as part of our fundraising Friday. Like if it was a focused, specific, workshop, I'm totally down. And I love that idea. So, but I do like the collaborative energy around fundraising Fridays.
Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that feedback, especially about the panelists. That's interesting to hear, and we'll definitely take that to note. I mean, I see a couple of like agreements in the chat, and we'll certainly have that conversation. I do think that's interesting to, that there might be a desire to hear more. This continue to be the space that it is, and create other place to have other voices, but maybe we'll mix it up a little bit, do a little bit of both and see how it does. But I appreciate that. Thank you. So I did mention that we're changing it, so this is just sort of me reiterating. So the session, like the first session of the month, is going to be like our traditional fundraising Friday sessions, but a little bit, like picking up where we left off or going the step deeper. And the thing that we are going to do different is, like I said, share the past presentations and decks if we've done them, so that you have that starting point to move from. And then the next level, the next session of the month, we're going to try to do something more cutting edge or thought provoking, or at least we think might be. How does that sound to folks? Were folks really wedded to the old way, and you're like, stop changing the soup, dude? I got a thumbs up. Cool. As always, we are interested in hearing your feedback. If this stuff feels like it's not working, let me know, let us know, and we'll totally take that into account. We are fans of course correcting when we need to, but we're also data based. So we're not going to course correct based on one or two people. We want to really hear from the group. But I appreciate the feedback so far. We'll see how it rolls. And to be able to talk about like what it means to have, like this fundamentals set of workshops and then this other set of workshops, I should sort of share what we're thinking. So we've created a tentative schedule. So this is sort of like the shorthand version that we use as like the 101 level classes, but please don't think of them, like as too basic. But this is like the first half of the month dates of the session and the sessions that we're considering. They're not chiseled in stone, maybe the first few, because it would take a minute for us to sort of reshuffle the program. But these are some of the things that we're thinking of, the fundamentals in fundraising that folks might want to get to a little bit deeper into for sessions. And then, this current fundraising Friday season goes into early next year. So we didn't nail down the dates for early next year, but we thought we came up with a couple more session ideas. One of the things that we have done the last 2 years that folks seem to like, but we weren't sure if we're like beating a dead horse type of a thing, was that we did an end of the year in July session where we did a deep dive, deep discussion about how to plan your end of the year giving program. Because July is a good time to start planning your end of the year giving program. We've done that twice in the past. We're curious if that's something folks want us to put back in the schedule because it was a really useful thing for y'all. The other question that we had about something that we've done in the past is we typically do like a year wrap up where we talk about what we've learned, in the fundraising year, and we, joke about the crystal ball, like what we think is coming up. We were curious if folks wanted to see something like that again. Again, wanting to make sure that we're keeping things fresh, but also wanting to make sure that we keep things on the agenda that folks like. Anybody have any thoughts, concerns about the first half of the month sessions? So it sounds like the end of the year in July might be something that folks might want us to put back on the calendar. All right. Cool. Feel free to, put your comments in the notes. It's fine. You don't have to jump on. But that's really useful. As far as like the content, is there something that sort of strikes you as like not again or yay, or what do you mean by that? Is there anything that's people wish they saw in this sort of fundamentals level? Let it sink in. You can come back to me at another time or put it in the chat, whichever works. Yeah, please.
Sorry, I was going to ask if you could expand on a little bit what the May 5th session would be talking about, more on metrics.
Yeah, so we had done a session in the past called Metrics That Matter. And it was a way to, develop your key performance indicators and the different things that you should be measuring as a fundraiser, to chart your success and to also help you answer that, that question that sometimes happens where it's like, hey, can you, bring in an extra bajillion dollars with no extra investment in your program? and you can sort of, rather than emotionally respond, you can show like metrics and benchmarks wise how much an investment it would actually take in your fundraising program to be able to meet that new need. So metrics is really about like measuring your own performance, charting your course to success, using data, and also, how data can be your friend in situations like that. So the Metrics That Matter was really about that. We wanted to go a little bit deeper, or maybe, a little bit more focused, perhaps talk about tools that would be useful or different ways to do metrics. I think we really only gave like one point of view. We haven't worked out the presentation yet, but that's what we're thinking.
I also just wanted to put out there, I think it might be nice to hear more from folks about your experiences with like just the rapidly diversifying slate of like donation channels. I mean, I think that I'm seeing a lot of interest on the donor side in donating in things like donating through things like crypto, or, sort of the afterpay type, installment based, like that's not a recurring gift type of gift. Seeing people wanting to more people wanting to donate through stock now. And, these are things that, at least for us, are pretty new. And, I'd just love to hear more from y'all about your experiences with that. I think the only real insight I've gotten from that are from like vendors trying to, pitch their CRMs or whatever to us. So I'd love to hear more about, from the professional side.
It's interesting that you say that, because we actually have a presentation that we're thinking about offering in September. It's the donor offerings in a digital age, which is about like all of the different ways to create pathways for donors to give, and all of the various technologies and solutions, in quotes, solutions that are out there. We've talked in the past about like, some of the base level things that you should have, but, in the age of digital wallets, we've had a cryptocurrency conversation presentation also in our YouTube channel. I feel like this is like a big commercial for our YouTube channel. But this will, so, but there are just so many, like, I feel you, there are so many different ways for folks to give. There are folks who we're learning that are really wed to their digital wallet, and like literally clicking the button is too much. Like one more button is too much. If they can just use their wallet on their phone, they're happy. So what does it mean for your organization if you're getting money from now like 10 other places? And how do you, keep your data clean and make it easy, but make it easy for them and still try to keep it easy-ish for you? So is that what you're thinking about?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So these are the sort of the next level discussions that we were thinking about for the second half of the month.
I would love, I don't know if this is of interest to others, but I would love to hear and discuss how other folks are using or not using AI. I'm just like starting to experiment with it. And then the other thing that the last conversation brought to mind for me is like, I would love a session on planned giving, if that fit in somewhere.
Yeah, we were planning on touching on AI in our technology in the one in the previous that was about technology and organizational sustainability.
Okay, great.
But that might just be a small part of that. So perhaps maybe we'll take a look. Maybe there's ways that we can put that in a couple places, because I know my experience that I've seen so far is that organizations are using AI at different levels. So some are using it to help create their social posts or their emails, or create chatbots on their website to engage people as they visit. And I feel like we could either do a big discussion about all the different ways that AI can be used, or we can talk about AI in the context of a certain way of fundraising. Are you thinking like a conversation about all the different ways that AI is used, can be used, or maybe you should be afraid of it being used, or is it more of like, this is a place where AI could help you?
Yeah, for me, more so the bigger kind of, because I'm just like trying to make sense of it and like, where could it help our organization?
Mhm.
I feel like I'm in kind of the earlier stages figuring that out.
Thanks. Anything else that folks feel like isn't here that you would like to see, things that you have questions about, you'd like to hear a little bit more about?
So just looking at this course schedule, I think my main question is, if you do not already have a training plan for this, would you have a training on or a discussion on capacity building grants on your YouTube channel? Because that is what my organization is looking for currently, is larger capacity building grants, and it's been a little bit harder to find them.
We have not done anything that's specific to capacity building grants that I recall. Again, I've only been here 11 months. That only is carrying a lot of weight with an asterisk there. But and I've tried to look at all of our past webinars. So I don't really feel like we talked about capacity building specifically. We have talked about institutional fundraising, and more generally. But could you talk a little bit more about what you're hoping to learn in that might help, either jog my memory or think of how we might incorporate that?
Yeah, so I've just been finding a lot in a lot of the research that I've been doing as far as grants that I could get for my organization lately, that while there are some capacity building grants out there, a large majority of grants are like project focused, where they specifically will say something that says like, this is not a capacity building grant. We're not meant to help you with everyday operational stuff, even though some of those grants can still be used towards those things. But at the end of the day, that's what a lot of nonprofits need. They need things to make sure that they can pay people so they can do the work that they're doing every single day. And I'm just having a lot of I think I'm just like struggling a little bit with finding those. So I think and I don't know if other people have this like a similar experience, so I think I would love some like just to have like a discussion or have a session that was kind of talking about like, how do you go about finding those capacity building support grants, or how to effectively write like a project-based grant in a way that could help build your capacity.
So you're saying capacity, but I feel like I'm hearing also like this is really about general operations and trying to find funding that's much less restricted than you need it to be, or than they want it to be.
Yes, I would say so. I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, so I apologize.
No, I also have not had enough caffeine today, because my brain could just be stuck in a groove there. Yeah, I think that a lot of folks would probably agree that getting general operating support out of foundations is immensely difficult. And that sometimes the best approaches are just having like big, difficult, honest conversations with funders that you have long relationships with to see if you can free up some of a currently restricted grant into something a little bit more hybrid that's part general, part restricted. But I think that that's a really good sort of food for thought for Kafili and I to take back and think about, where that might fit into either the things that we're already thinking about, or whether that might work for a standalone session. One of the things that we did add to the schedule that is in our view, sort of in alignment with this, is diversifying through earned income. So Progressive Multipliers Jam is all about creating independent revenue, independent from the philanthropic sector. So it doesn't mean just unrestricted fundraising, but it means all the different ways that we can bring revenue into our organization that is not tied with strings. And a lot of organizations have the capacity to do things that could generate earned income, fundraising revenue, however you want to call it, that will do exactly what you're hoping revenue to do, to allow you to invest it in the capacity building of your team and to cover the costs that typically foundations don't want to cover. So that would be probably the closest one to what you're thinking, that we currently have on the list. Kafili, not to put you on the spot, but to put you on the spot, do you have any thoughts about what we're thinking from a program learnings perspective and talking about general operating support?
General operating support for
How
grantees?
yeah, like how to build your how to get more general operating support dollars from funders, but also how to specifically, I guess, as it relates to any of these trainings that we got.
Yeah, I think that would probably, looking at these, would fall into the May session the easiest.
Oh, yeah.
And also the July session as well. I think that in general, there have been like philanthropic trends where we're both seeing like more of a wait and see period from institutional funders. And they are trying to kind of hyper focus their giving on specific projects that they think that they can sell to the powers that be on the board side. But there has been a lot of pushback that funders aren't meeting the moment right now. And so there's like kind of this yo-yoing effect that's been happening, especially post 2020, about how philanthropy is going to show up in moments, because some groups are asking for more general operating support for flexibility, especially from a grassroots side, but the larger, more traditional nonprofits are actually asking for more program-based things. So there's just a kind of inherent tension there, but I'd definitely be happy to incorporate that into one of those sessions.
Yeah, and the one of the things that I have been hearing from a lot of movement groups and that has been told to the philanthropic community is that folks are actually saying like no to capacity building grants. Just, like we get the sentiment, but the better sentiment is general operations. So that could be part of why you're having a harder time finding capacity building grants, is because the funders are responding to folks who are like, don't make me go through a bunch of trainings and hoops to get money that will help build my organization's bottom line and capacity. We just need the funds. We're grown-ups and we know how to use it. So we have seen funders talk about that they are literally pulling back on that because they want to increase their general operations funding. But that's, I really appreciate the question. I see a lot of folks commenting on it in the chat. So clearly capacity building and general operating grant making is something folks want to think about. But, we're always going to push back and be like, the best way to secure your organization's future is to diversify your revenue streams and to bring in revenue in all the different ways that you can. So while we'll be happy to think about how we can build this in, we're also going to try to push to help folks see different ways to grow their programs so that you're not so like tied to the whims of big philanthropy who makes the decisions about what part of you they want to fund, not knowing that it takes the whole organization to get our missions to scale. So thank you so much for putting that out there. Anybody else got something that they think should be on our list that isn't, or you want something explained a little bit more? Anything that folks are like, yeah, don't do that. That doesn't sound fun. I'd rather hear now than after, you know, we build the session, build the deck and do the session. And then you're like, yeah, that wasn't so great. All right. Well, you know, like I said, these, while we've created the schedule, if as we go along, as we hear feedback, we'll make adjustments. And it sounds like the first adjustment that we might want to make is to fit back in the end of year in July. And I think we might be able to do that. We might be able to replace our authentic storytelling with that, and maybe combine authentic and impact-driven storytelling into a single session or something. So I hear you on that, and we'll figure out how we might tackle the capacity building funding conundrum. Cool. Feel free to shoot us emails to be like, hey, I thought of something, and would love you to consider it. We always want to hear that. But now we're back now to like the open free for all space. So we can keep picking up the conversation. We can keep talking about where we left off before, about what you're seeing in your fundraising world, or take the space to ask each other questions that I might have accidentally cut off conversation about. So if folks want to keep talking about capacity building stuff, I saw a lot of stuff in the chat. Folks can feel free to say that out loud. Or are y'all like, I'm so done with hearing Polly's voice, I really would just like to get a few minutes back of my day?
I love hearing your voice, Polly.
Oh, you always know how to make a girl smile.
I just want to mention, because I haven't been on for a while, how exciting it is to me to see so many new faces. And I'm sorry my face isn't available, but the hotel I'm at has very sad Wi-Fi, and it keeps telling me I'm going to lose my signal. But I'm grateful for kind of the creativity and people coming together. And I really look forward to this being an ongoing dialogue. I had kind of thought, well, I spent a lot of time in these sessions last year and I should leave space for other people, but I'm super thrilled about the selection you guys are going to be offering. But also what is so meaningful to me is the feedback from my peers. So I appreciate everyone who's weighed in, and I look forward to hearing more from the rest of you as we move through. Here we go, almost to July again. I know it doesn't seem we're getting close to the end of our year, but it's been a really daunting year for me as a fundraiser, and I say that as a long time fundraiser. So anything and everything, the feedback that people have to offer buoys my spirit at a time when we've just been kind of kicked while we're down a lot over the last 3 years. So we are a small but mighty organization, and don't let the word museum fool you. We're an environmental activator, and our work in the community is primarily serving children, but also being a place for people to come together. And it's lovely to see all of the important work. I've worked in so many of the sectors that I see represented here today. It feels good. So I just wanted to offer that.
Thank you. Anybody have any other questions, comments, concerns, things I didn't bring up before? Anything you wanted to follow up on? Samira, did I see you pop off of mute?
I just wanted to hop on and say thank you to everyone that came and spoke and shared today. I am pretty new to my journey into being like a very active fundraiser within my organization. So it has been so validating, honestly, to come here and listen to other people talk and hear that I'm not the only person that's going through some of these struggles, and that these are like trends that we can track together and understand together and demystify together. So yeah, thank you for everyone that came today. It was a really great session. I can't wait to come to the next one.
Oh, thanks so much. And this doesn't have to be the moment of like mutual admiration, I swear. Well, I truly, truly, truly appreciate everybody's participation in today's conversation. Remember, if you haven't put your name in the chat, if you could, for the purposes of our making sure that we've got complete attendance, it would be really awesome if you could drop your name in there. I look forward to having y'all like break apart the crystal ball that I, put out there at the end of last year. Let's see if I was off track in any way at our next session. If you didn't see it, you have time to see last year's session on our YouTube channel. If you have questions, comments, concerns, you feel free to reach out to Kafili at Progressive Multiplier .fund. Actually, I don't know why I have our wrong email addresses there. I completely messed up there. Sorry about that. So it's Kafili or Polly or Bethany at progressivemultiplier.fund. And you should give your feedback about our Fundraising Friday training sessions at SurveyMonkey. It's in your calendar invite, I believe. And I just look forward to seeing y'all at the next session. And just thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Polly.